All right, Jimmy on and Paul Stone talking some college basketball with you twice a week as we look at the late night Tuesday action and the full slate of Wednesday action. And then later in the week, we'll look at the weekend action. Paul, let's start off with the Big 12 and put a star for the week for the Big 12. That Houston and Iowa State game was unbelievable. The crowd, we know about the home court advantage at Ames, but a 10-point deficit comeback for Iowa State. They win and cover the 1.5 to 2.5 point spread there. Let's stay in the Big 12. And boy, maybe one of the biggest surprises of the year, but maybe one of the best wins. We had Minnesota, we had Wisconsin win in Ann Arbor, in Champaign, Illinois. Had Auburn go down to Gainesville and beat Florida in the middle of the SEC schedule. Well, man, this was win by the Texas Tech Red Raiders at Arizona in Tucson was really, really impressive on Saturday night. So the obvious is, to me, almost the autoplay is at least the strong consideration every time there's a big, big emotional win. You leave some of that emotion in the court. You're going to have less to go on for next week. This isn't one time where I'm going to go against that. Texas Tech and the reasons why. I see this team kind of building a little bit. We looked at last year's form that Texas Tech played. Remember, they had the eventual national champion beat in the regional final against Florida. Double-digit lead, very late, about 7-8 minutes to go in the game, and they lost a crazy, crazy loss against Florida. Florida goes on to win the whole thing. Beat Auburn in the semi, come back against Houston in the national championship game. And I see the same coach. I see the same star player in Toppin. Now they lost Williams. Williams is playing in Raleigh with Will Wade at NC State, but some other players on this team. So I see the base of this team, especially the coaching, that I think is going to make a run and is posed for that again this year. They were so well coached. I mean, they really, really out executed Florida and was just a tough luck loser. I mean, Florida just went crazy with the threes down the stretch. Arizona State, on the other hand, I got to be fair here. If Bobby Hurley's last name wasn't, it was if it was Smith, he'd probably be long gone in Tempe by this point. So Arizona State's been a big disappointment. They showed up in the games against Arizona; they were competitive in those, but I think Texas Tech is just going to keep on. I think they're going to handle this win a little bit more in stride because of their coaching, because of their maturity within the lineup, especially Toppin, their leader. And I'm going to go against the buck here and go with Texas Tech laying at 8.5 in Tempe against Arizona State, Paul.
Yeah, I tell you, if anybody had any questions about JT Toppin, that performance that he put on Saturday in Tucson, that was something else. He's clearly one of the very best players in all of college basketball. This Arizona State team, they've won 2 of their last 3 games, so they hadn't completely thrown in the towel. They won on the road at Utah and then won after that at home this past weekend against Oklahoma State. But as you mentioned, it seems like a foregone conclusion that Bobby Hurley's 11th season in Tempe will indeed be his last. They've been able to typically hold their own against the second division teams in the Big 12, but they don't have the horses at present, to trade blows with the league's best and brightest. And Texas Tech certainly qualifies as part of that group. You mentioned Texas Tech off that hard-fought 78-75 overtime win at top-ranked Arizona. Tonight's game scheduled to tip off at 10 p.m. Central, so you have a slight advantage there in Arizona State's favor. You mentioned as well the fact that Tech is off the big victory, but I just don't. I don't have a strong opinion here. I just don't know that Arizona State is on the same level as Texas Tech, but I don't like the spot for the Red Raiders. But I agree, it would have to be Texas Tech or nothing because, like you, I think they're on an upward trajectory, and I think they're preparing for March Madness.
All right. Don't forget the second half of the conference schedule is heating up in college basketball. And Bet Rivers is giving bonus bets to use as we come down the stretch. Get a $10 bonus bet to use on college basketball with the code CSR216. CSR216. Go to your Bet Rivers app and enter the bonus code CSR216 to get a $10 bonus bet to use on any college basketball game. Offer ends on March 8th. Must be 21. Eligible players only. Gambling problem? Call a 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's move on to the SEC and go to Como, Columbia, Missouri. And the Missouri Tigers are catching 6.5 against the Vanderbilt Commodores. Vandy, remember, they were one of the last handful of teams in college basketball to be undefeated, and then they were unseeded there. And they have they lost three in a row, but now they have caught fire a little bit. Now they travel to a desperate Missouri team, laying 6.5. Paul.
Yeah, following Missouri's 85-68 home loss to Texas over the weekend, Missouri now listed among the first four out by ESPN bracketologist Joe Lunardi. But beginning this Wednesday, February 18th, this home game against Vanderbilt, Missouri is going to have three opportunities in a 6-day span to get quad one wins. So this is a critical 6-day stretch for the Missouri Tigers. They're going to have this midweek meeting, first of all, against Vanderbilt. They travel to Arkansas this weekend. Then they're back at home next Tuesday, February 24th, to host Tennessee. So these next three games pretty much probably going to determine whether Missouri makes or misses March Madness, makes the tournament. You know, first things first, it all starts Wednesday, the game where they host Vanderbilt. This is a Vanderbilt squad that, has righted the ship. You mentioned the 3-game losing streak that they sustained there in mid-January, but the Commodores, they've now won 5 out of the last 6. So they're back in a good groove, playing well. But I just think this is a spot that should produce a valiant effort from the Missouri Tigers. As you mentioned, their back's now firmly planted against the wall. It's just a situation where you got to think they're going to throw their, best punch. First of all, they're not only fighting for their March Madness lives, but they're one, coming off a loss, 2, they're playing at home, and 3, they're getting points. So I like all 3 of those elements there. And as a projected 6.5-point home underdog, Missouri doesn't necessarily have to beat Vanderbilt. They just have to battle Vanderbilt. They just have to take it into the final 2 minutes, the final 90 seconds, and keep it close. We have a projected line of 6.5 here. I think it might get a little bit lower, but Missouri's played well as a home underdog. They have a victory, upset both Florida and Auburn as a home underdog. They were getting 7.5 when they beat Florida 76-74 earlier this season. They were only getting 1.5 at home against Auburn, but beat the Tigers 84-74. So they've thrived before and put their best foot forward as a home underdog. I'll take Missouri down to about, I hope to get more, but I'll take Missouri down to about +4.5 over Vanderbilt. I think they're going to keep it close against the Commodores as they look to try to keep their March Madness hopes alive.
All right, let's move on to the Big Ten. The Big Ten has been awesome this year, man. They have had some great games last week during the week. I mean, it's really, really fun games to watch. You know, like that game in Nebraska was unbelievable in that overtime game, that comeback where they fell a little bit short. Let's go. But one of the interesting swings, and some of my friends that cover the Big Ten extensively talk about this LA road trip and this USC UCLA swing, Los Angeles swing. And it's caught some teams, at least, Purdue split there, Indiana split there, and some others. And now it is Illinois' turn to travel to Los Angeles to take on USC and then UCLA. So the tricky spot there. And then we start with the USC. And USC, Baker Mazzaro, who went down with a knee injury against Indiana. Some people thought it could be a strain or tear. Listen, strain is a way better news. We're talking about 3 to 5 weeks is better instead of 9 to 12 months in rehabilitation. Baker Mazzara could play. Even if he plays, his impact, I think, will be minimal in this one against the Fighting Illini. But the other thing is Gilbert Arenas' sons. Elijah Arenas is starting to find his way. The first 4 games, he averaged 7.5 points a game. His last 3, 26 a game. And the other thing is, even when he has struggled from the field, like he did in Columbus, 6 of 19, okay, he still attacked the rim. He shot 16 free throws in that game against Ohio State. They did cover by the hook in that one. So I think this team and their star is starting to find his comfort zone in Musselman's rotation. And so I'm going to take the USC Trojans home dog here, maybe about to they were expected to have a better season than they are having. There's no doubt about that. But USC plus a 7.5 in a tricky road swing that has proven to be a little bit tricky for these higher echelon Big Ten teams. Take the USC Trojans home dog plus 7.5, Paul.
Yeah, you mentioned it, but much has been made about the coast-to-coast travel challenges faced by Big Ten teams in either direction. That certainly qualifies here as the visitors from Champaign head west to take on USC in Los Angeles. Illinois, this team, I think when they're at their best, man, they are almost as good as anybody. They had won 12 straight before dropping back-to-back overtime games. First of all, at Michigan State and then at home to Wisconsin. The Fighting Illini, though, they ended their 2-game mini skid emphatically over the weekend with a 20-point home win over Indiana. At its best, again, I think Illinois is among the top 10, top 8 probably teams in the country. But these east to west again and vice versa, road trips in the Big Ten can be somewhat tricky. I'm always leery, though. What kind of keeps me off of USC? I'm just leery of Illinois' A games. But USC, they've been good at home. They've beat a solid Indiana team by 6 there in Los Angeles. They lost to Purdue at home by 5. So certainly USC has the horses to keep it close against the Fighting Illini, especially if Baker Mazzara is able to play tonight. Looking at some of the latest information, looks like he's just kind of day to day. They hope to get him back sometime this week, and certainly they would hope to have him back for this Wednesday night game against Illinois.
All right, let's move on to the American and conference game here between 7-6 UAB and 7-5 the Temple Owls in the American. Curious to see what you got cooking here, Paul. UAB catching 1.5 in Philadelphia at Temple.
Yeah, college basketball teams, Jimmy, they typically epitomize the old saying, home sweet home. We see one version of a team on its home floor and then quite another more often than not when they're playing on enemy soil. And obviously, in the vast majority of cases, the vast majority of teams, the version of State U that we see on their home floor is superior to the version that we see on the road. There are exceptions to almost every rule, however, and UAB of the American Conference certainly qualifies as the anomaly, if you will, in this one. You take a cursory glance at the American Conference standings, and there is UAB at 7-6. Nothing particularly unusual about that placement. But when you look and examine how the Blazers got to this point, it's just quite another story. First of all, you look at their home performance. UAB at home this year in American Conference play, a dismal 1-6. The only conference game UAB has won on their home floor came against 11th place Rice, 71-65. So they have failed to protect their home floor miserably, but they have been true road warriors. They've won all 6 of their league road games as they go to Philadelphia to play Temple on Wednesday. Their road victims have included league frontrunner South Florida. They also have defeated Tulsa on the road. Tulsa currently tied for second in the American with Wichita State. When they beat South Florida, they were getting 8.5 points in Tampa, beat the Bulls in overtime, 109-106. And then the victory at Tulsa, 68-63. They were catching 9.5 against the Golden Hurricane. I'm not sure how you can explain UAB's prowess on the road in American Conference play. We certainly didn't see it coming in non-conference. In fact, in non-conference, they went to Raleigh, got beat by NC State by 25 points, went to Middle Tennessee there in Murfreesboro, lost to 15 to the Blue Raiders of the Conference USA. But when you look at the facts and the box scores here, they don't lie. They have been, again, road warriors in American Conference play. So I'm going to take UAB. We project them to get 1.5 at Temple. I'll take UAB at pick or better over the Owls.
All right, let's move back to the SEC and talk about the trip to Knoxville, Tennessee. Thompson Bowling Arena, the Oklahoma Sooners coming in. What a disappointing season for Porter Moser Sooners. His seat was warm last year. They rallied to get into the NCAA tournament. That was one of 14 teams of the SEC of the 16-team league to get in, but started out with a win against Ole Miss and then lost 9 in a row. And pretty much everybody has, sealed the fate. Porter Moser said they might be looking to hire a new coach this year. But all of a sudden, they go to Vanderbilt as double-digit dogs and win out right there. Scored a bunch of points in that game also, and then beat a projected, at this time, a projected NCAA tournament team, the Georgia Bulldogs. They're kind of on the slide right now. Beat about double digits at home in Norman. And then you look back over the course of the season, what could have been? And this is about as bad luck of a team as there is in college basketball. We're talking about lost double-digit leads against Alabama in Texas. We're talking about double buzzer beaters. One buzzer beater from 3 at the end of regulation to send it into overtime, and another buzzer beater 3 at the end of overtime to lose by 1 in Columbia, Missouri against the Missouri Tigers. And then we look at another game, a lost lead with under 25 seconds to go against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Those are 4 bad beats for the Oklahoma Sooners. So their 3-9 record could easily be 6-6 right now, or even better. So now they travel to Tennessee, and the only thing is kind of a sleepy performance, well, I guess you could say, against LSU. Actually, very close in the second half against LSU, who's been horrible this year and is at the bottom of the league. But Tennessee laying 11.5. Classic case where a team is playing above their overall resume. The NCAA tournament, it's not like the football. You don't get credit for a competitive loss. It's a loss. That's all it is. It figures into the equation, the metrics, and that is it. So 11.5 points is a ton here for Tennessee to be laying to Oklahoma. Oklahoma now scratching and clawing just as they did last year. Their form is better, and certainly they should have had better fate this year. Well, hey, maybe they should have fouled up 3. Talk about that argument all the time. So maybe there was some coaching miscalculations along the way as well. And maybe they're just not as good to maintain double-digit leads against a couple of those teams like Alabama and Texas, and that's fair. But, man, they've had some tough beats this year. 11.5 is a lot for this team that's kind of caught some life again, when sometimes it's hard to do, to keep that locker room, keep competing at a high level. I'm taking the Sooners plus the 11.5 in Knoxville, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the SEC is not as top heavy as they've been in some recent past seasons, but I still contend that the top to bottom balance of this league, it is so difficult. No really easy outs. In the league, it's just anytime you can win a game in the Southeastern Conference, especially on the road, it's an accomplishment. Not some great revelation on my part, but this year's edition of the Tennessee Volunteers, certainly not one of Rick Barnes' finer productions, if you will, there in Knoxville. In fact, it's almost odd to say the Volunteers not ranked in either major poll this week. That doesn't happen very often, but to some degree anyway, it seems to me like the betting marketplace is having some difficulty perhaps letting go of the past when it comes to Tennessee. I think the Volunteers remain slightly overvalued, even at this late point in the season. The Volunteers only 10-15 against the spread overall. So if you faded Tennessee in every game, you'd be hitting a pretty nice 60% clip there. Oklahoma, you mentioned their 9-game losing streak, which was ended a couple of Saturdays ago. In fact, they've won 2 straight, the last 2 Saturdays. First of all, they go to Nashville. They get a lead on Vanderbilt, have to hang on for dear life late, defeat the Commodores 92-91 the first Saturday in February. Then they go a week between games. This past Saturday, on the 14th, on Valentine's Day, they disposed of Georgia by 16 there in Norman. I think the Sooners could be playing with some newfound confidence. I think the Volunteers, I always kind of look for opportunities to fade double-digit favorites in these types of spots. I think you're kind of, you can't quite see the light at the end of the tunnel on one hand, but you're getting tired on the other. So hard to probably carry this type of lumber. I agree. I kind of see where you're coming from here. I agree. It's got to be Oklahoma plus the double digits or nothing.
All right, Paul, let's go to our last pick. It's one of yours in the American East. And looking atop the standings in the American East, and it's NJIT at 10-2. After that, University of Maryland, Baltimore County 9-2, and Vermont, the Catamounts at 9-3. And that's the game you're looking at here. Maryland, Baltimore County -1.5 at home against Vermont.
I tell you, where else are you going to get America East Conference basketball talk today, Jimmy? I think we might be it. It was 8 years ago, one of the greatest moments, perhaps the greatest. I mean, some could argue the greatest moment in NCAA basketball tournament history back in March of 2018 when UMBC, or the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, became the first 16 seed in the NCAA men's basketball tournament history to defeat a 1 seed when they knocked off Virginia 74-54 in Charlotte, North Carolina. The UMBC was 20.5-point underdogs in that game. Just a tremendous historic upset. So that was actually UMBC's second trip to the tournament. They had previously been in 2008. So those are their only 2 appearances in 2008, 2018, when they pulled the big upset over Virginia. Certainly a lot of work to be done, but the Retrievers are among a handful of teams that should contend for the America Conference's single bid in the NCAA tournament. One thing to keep in mind, these regular season matchups mean a whole lot in the American East, because unlike virtually every, or most conferences anyway, that utilize a single site for their conference tournament, the America East, they award the home court advantage to the higher seeded team in every case. All the games in the conference tournament are played on the higher seeds home court. So these games have great meaning. As you mentioned, currently NJIT, or New Jersey Institute of Technology, they sit atop the America East standings at 10-2. UMBC just a half game back at 9-2, and then Vermont only a full game behind NJIT at 9-3. So you got 3 teams up there very tight. 2 of those play in this game on Thursday, with UMBC hosting Vermont. We've got UMBC as a projected 1.5-point home favorite. These teams are playing for the second time this year. The first game, of course, in Vermont. The Catamounts won that game 64-55. So UMBC looking to even the season series. The Retrievers, they have been very good at home in conference play. They have won all 5 of their conference games, and they've won those games by an average of just over 12 points an outing. So they have been very good at home. I think they're going to get things even with Vermont. I'll take UMBC up to -2.5 over the Catamounts.
Hey, you talk about that first 1-16 win that we had. Of course, it was Fairleigh Dickinson against Purdue, the other one. But Vermont has some history as well back in 2005 when they upset number 4 seed Syracuse in the NCAA tournament as well. We do it every Tuesday and Thursday right here on the College Sports Rush YouTube channel. And again, all the way through all of March Madness, the NCAA basketball tournament. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott. We'll see you next time. Brought to you by our friends over at Bet Rivers.